All right. So we're ready to go, I think, here, Q. We got our buddy Jonathan Slane on board here with us, and he's gonna tell his story and do all the right stuff for us to be another epic ditch digger CEO. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually think so too. I mean, of course, everybody that you are connected with are really good at what they do, and one of the things that he is a subject matter expert at, and this is what I really feel like a lot of people need to hear is recession. Like, granted, we're going to hear his story, but I'm so excited to hear just the mindset that he has as far as him assisting businesses through their specific recession and how they did it. And actually his story on it too is actually pretty inspiring. So I'm looking forward to it.
So we want it all, right?
We want everything. Even though he's in Cleveland right now, we want everything.
Exactly. We're going to squeeze every ounce of juice out of this dude, all right? So Jonathan, welcome to Ditch Digger CEO, brother. Thanks for being here today.
Rock on. Thanks for having me.
So we're gonna go. We always go into the start of the mind of Jonathan and each guest. All right, we want to understand where the foundation of your principles were built. Any mentors as a young guy, and people that inspired you to be who you are today. So let's start with your upbringing, man. You're from Cleveland originally.
Yep, from Shaker Heights, Ohio, and born and raised here. And then really first mentor were my parents. And my parents are still alive, still live about 6 minutes away from me here, and help out a lot with raising our kids to this day. My dad was actually just trying to call me. We're on the once a day plan. And so I think that really was foundational for me growing up and to where we've gotten to.
And tell us a little bit about all that. Then your dad, mom, what did they do growing up for a living? What'd you think of all that? And then family wise, brothers, sisters, all that kind of stuff around you. And what are the values that were ingrained in you from that upbringing?
Yeah, for sure. So my dad was a used car salesman. I think that some of that is still in me to this day. So it's funny. I'll go out appliance shopping with my wife, and we'll be up at Best Buy. And she didn't know that you can still try to haggle at Best Buy. But
I didn't know that either.
That's the first nugget for today.
Man, you can, yeah. If you're up at Home Depot or you're up at Lowe's or Best Buy, you can definitely ask the manager and usually get at least 10% off.
Whoa.
Yeah. So my mom worked in daycares, so. She said she used to change diapers for a living, but really a lot of what she did was to help raise lots of kids and just loves kids. And so to this day is still helping us with raising our girls. Our girls are 6 and 8 years old. But growing up, my sisters were 12 and 16 years older than me.
Wow.
I guess they actually still are. But they, so really I grew up with 3 moms is what I tell everybody.
Yeah.
And, so still tight with them. My big sister, still works with me, actually in the recession business and the auto bond consulting business. So helps keep me straight and organized, with everything that I'm doing.
Which sister is that? What's her name?
That's Wendy.
Oh yeah, I know Wendy.
So, you know Wendy.
Wendy's awesome.
Yeah, and then so Wendy's married to Jay, my brother-in-law, and I think you know Jay pretty well too.
They're a great couple.
So really growing up with them, like I said, our family was really tight, and I think the thing that kind of lands on me is that when I got married, I understood a few things that were different about my family, at least from my wife's family, in that, like I mentioned earlier, we're all talking generally once a day. And I think my dad probably talks to each of the kids at least once a day, probably even more with my sisters. And then I'm talking to my sisters on a daily, weekly basis, at least. And for my wife, I understand that they'll go weeks at a time without talking. And not saying either one is any better than the other. It's just funny to me that was kind of how you grow up one way or the other. I don't know what it was like for you, Gary, but so So
that's an awesome point right there. Right, stop right there. That's a great point. I love my sisters, my brother, my dad, and still yet don't talk to them enough. When I do talk to them every, let's say, week or 2 weeks, whatever it might be, my sisters, heck, it might be every couple months or so, right? Even, and as much as I love them, I love talking to them, but yet you don't do it enough. I don't do it enough for sure. So that's a great point to think about, right, Q? I mean, these are people in your life. They're your blood. You love them. They're like nobody else, right? Other than God, probably. And boy, how do you not communicate more often with them, right? Because we only have so much time on this earth, and why wouldn't we, right? Talk to our dad, mom every day, right? Now my mom's not alive today, but I talk to her pretty much, but not as much as I look back, not as much as I should have, right? So what a great point right there, IQ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I would say in terms of values, in our family, it was just loyalty. I remember that always being big, and honesty and integrity. And my dad always defined that as what you do when nobody else is looking or nobody else knows. Mm-hmm. So that was ingrained in me. In fact, I was looking behind me in my office a couple of months ago. He wrote that on a pad of paper in my office and just left it for me. And so I have it hanging up on my wall just to remind me the importance of that. Whether it's making sure that everything from if you're in a public restroom and you don't leave it a mess, you always leave it better than when you found it. It's just little things like that I think for me, it comes to me at the strangest times, but was just thinking about that yesterday.
Do you do like I do that? I'm the same mindset in many ways, and I get this thing. I always leave the bathroom better. And often clean the toilet bowl too. From others before me.
I was on a flight yesterday, and I'm thinking so many people don't do that, and I think that's crazy because everybody knows the last person in the bathroom on an airplane before that, and yet people still walk out and they're not even ashamed and can't go anywhere. So it's like I just really can't figure out how people think it's cool to go in the airplane bathroom, leave it a mess, walk out, walk back to their seat. Everybody knows where that. So I don't know.
You just put him on a rampage right there. He's like, speaking of that, actually coming back from Denver.
I thought he was going to say I was gross or something, right? Like most people are thinking, whoa, that guy's gross. He's actually cleaned the toilet bowl for the people before him, right?
That's pretty cool.
I like to tuck into it before and after every passenger, so that's why I always get a seat right next to the bathroom on a flight.
That is funny. That is funny. Jonathan, one of the things you just kind of alluded to, at least to me, and I know we'll probably go back and forth on a lot of this, but specifically, of course, that integrity. That's kind of what it sounds like you have, like, from that standpoint, because that's what your mom and your dad instill into you. But also, communication is huge, especially in business. Was that something that assisted you as you started to grow, let's say in your first job that you had, or, because I'm pretty sure, the first job that you had, you probably did extremely well. You're probably one of the best of the best, especially with a dad that knows how to, articulate sales, if you will, from a car salesman perspective. But integrity and communication, can you talk a little bit more about that in the business
and wait
aspect?
a minute, and just so you know, I mean, I from my view, my paradigm, I've not always heard of used car salesmen and integrity in the same sentence, really. But they're definitely out there.
Well, his dad is one of them,
right, Jonathan?
Sure.
Yeah. So for me, integrity when it comes to business, I see it a lot as a core value, and it drives me crazy from the standpoint that I don't like core values that are super self-evident. Because I think that so many companies have integrity, fun, and teamwork as their core values. Mm-hmm. And my beef with it is that it doesn't let you tell your story. In other words, when I say integrity, everybody's like, yep, got it. Integrity, super important. And that's table stakes. And so everybody's already moving on to what else do you got? Like, sure. What's the core value? So for me, I think I'm not saying you can't have integrity as your core value. It's just, is there another way to market it? Is there another way to frame it that's a little more unique? In other words, could we say it a different way that allows you to tell your story? So for me, instead of saying a core value is integrity, I'm already starting to play with this no used car salesman here type language. And then people are like, well, what's that all about? And I think then I could tell whoever wants to know, whether it be a prospective client, whether it be you guys, whether it be my employees. Look, my dad was a car salesman, and I know that they get a bad rap, but let me tell you why integrity is important to me and what my dad taught me about integrity.
I like it.
So that lets it wrap in a different way that makes it interesting, that you stub your toe on.
Absolutely.
And so I'm big on that in the same way that if the value is integrity, just call it no airplane bathrooms. And then again, you get to tell that story. You get to make people laugh, have some fun with it in a way that people can remember. Because I also think that, you know, I'm traveling all over the country. I do all the consulting work with all these different companies. And if integrity is your core value, I just don't think employees really get it or engage with it. But if you give them a hook like no airplane bathrooms, then like when you're doing a paving job and they're using the portage on and somebody else goes in there, it's like, man, that we didn't leave that like we need to, because we're all about the no airplane bathroom thing around here. So let's take another shot at that.
Sure. I like it.
So I hope that answers the question somewhat in terms of where I'm coming from with integrity, because I just want to be careful that people don't use it in a way that's trite, because it is really important to me. And I feel like sometimes we minimize that when we just use the word and move on too quickly.
Sure. So tell me about your first jobs. Did you work as a kid? Did you go through 8 years of college and then got a job? Tell us about that.
No, I worked, first job was doing computer consulting for I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to say old people, but for old people. And it was when computers were first starting to come out. Like I remember Apple IIgs and the first Packard Bell computers. And I remember people in the neighborhood were getting the first computers, and I would go over to their houses and help them figure out how to get online, how to do basic word processing, all of those things. And really just by referral, started with a woman in the neighborhood, and from there picked up a bunch more jobs.
How old were you then, and what type of coin did you make there?
Yeah, so I remember being able to, I remember saving up for my first car with that gig. So I know that my dad must have driven me for the first couple of years. So probably around 14.
Wow.
And I don't remember, I don't remember exactly how much I was making, Gary, but I do remember that I saved up enough from that job to buy my first car. Awesome. And when I first saw her, she was sitting by the curb. The sunlight reflected off of her perfect body. She was a 1989 Buick Skylark sedan.
Oh, nice. I like it.
All right.
Yeah.
And what that thing set you back?
$2,000.
$2,000. All right.
So I bought it from my aunt.
Nice. And so these people, these older people around, and they might have been younger much younger than me at the time to be old people for a 14-year-old, right? How'd you connect with them? What was it like, trying to connect with these people of a different generation, and how'd you do that? And tell us a little bit about what you felt like then and what you think they felt like.
So for me, I was listening to your podcast episode with Jimmy from Jimmy John's, and what he said in that was that, there were certain, because you were asking about his energy, and you were kind of beating him up about it, if I remember correctly.
Sure.
And you're like, man, where'd you get this energy? You're so full of energy. And is that something that you learned along the way? And how does that work? And he just said, I think it was something I was born with. It was God-given.
Yeah. And
so when you asked me the question of how I connected with them or connect with other people, I do think that that's something I was probably just born with. I've always just been kind of able to flex my behavior, my personality, I think, to be able to adjust quickly to other people. And so I think it's really born more out of self-awareness, because I don't necessarily think I have super high EQ, but I do think I'm self-aware enough to know when I'm talking too much or when I'm not talking enough. Sure. And to be able to modulate that to fit with whoever I'm working with.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, and think of a young kid, again, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid connecting with older people in the neighborhood, gaining their confidence, right? That he can actually teach them how to start up these computers. I wish I had you around back then because I can remember the first computer we bought, and I was trying to figure it out. I figured out how to put it all together and hook it up, and I think, man, this is kind of cool. I might maybe I'm into this stuff. And I walked away from it and never looked at it again. And still today, don't have a laptop. But again, I if I had a kid like you around, maybe I could have called little Jonathan and he would come by and showed me how to go a little further with it.
That's funny.
But that's the way it was. So no, I can't imagine. Some of these people look back and think about, hey, remember that punk kid, that 14, 15-year-old kid we paid $3 an hour to teach us how to operate a computer? Where's he at today, right? And probably a lot of them probably know where you're at and are pretty excited for you. So anyway, yeah, so that's really cool. I can visualize that story, how cool it would have been knocking on doors for you and your dad to your dad and mom to be looking at you, watching you do this stuff had to be a blast for them too.
Yeah, I remember my dad always being super supportive. And I mean, there were other jobs like paper routes even before that. And I know he was always willing to drive me around or help me figure out all those pieces. But
absolutely.
I had a lot of jobs as a kid. The next one I really remember was I was a car valet.
Sure.
Oh,
and
okay.
So that makes me think everybody really should work for tips at some point in their career to just understand what it's like being in the service business and being accountable for tips. I really think that that's critical. I think that was pretty formative, understanding where people are coming from. And I'm an especially good tipper to this day and always will be because it's a tough gig, man. Yeah.
And you started with newspaper routes as I did. And there wasn't big money in delivering newspapers, right? When I did it was $6 a week or so for 32 newspapers. On Sundays, they're big newspapers, right? I had to do 2 trips with my basket bike, right? I had all these baskets all over the bike. But my tips at the end of the 2 weeks, I'd collect every 2 weeks, and it might be another $5 or $6, maybe $10 in tips. So all in all, it could be as much as like, $20 or so in 2 weeks, maybe $22 or $3 in 2 weeks. And that was big money for me as a kid. But again, it was all about, delivering that paper and putting it inside their door because that customer wanted that, or making sure you got underneath the deck for this customer. And this customer wanted you not do a couple knocks on the door before you drop the paper so they know it's there.
How long did you do it? How long did you do a paper route?
About 10 years old to 13, and I subbed it out to my brother after that for a while.
And then what about you, Jonathan? How long did you do a paper route?
I don't remember it lasting more than a couple months.
Yeah, all right.
I remember starting in winter in Cleveland, and that
good
sucked.
for you. Yeah. So I too, that's probably the only thing I could say. I did a paper route. I lasted 1 week, and I was like, I'm done with that. I couldn't do it at all. I vividly remember it because, like you said, you have to put it on the you got to put it on the. What is it called? The stairs or whatever the case may be.
Inside the door.
Yeah, inside the door or whatever. And I just vividly remember trying to throw it up there because I try to be all, efficient. And then all of a sudden, a dog comes out and I just call my mom, like, I can't do this no more. But it did show me appreciation for work ethic. So I'm getting to a point, Jonathan, I wanted to know, like, with all of the, the valet and then the, you also being a paper boy, so to speak, what were some, I guess, I don't want to say core values because we kind of talked about that, but some tips, if you will, of, I guess work ethic, or what's some things you've learned that you utilize in your entrepreneur career now? I guess that's what I'm getting to.
Yeah. So, as I think through that, like, I have a crazy strong work ethic, and the part, like, so I know that grit is a big thing right now. Like, you need to have grit. And then I know it's popular to talk about hustle, and you got to just hustle and have some side hustle going. As I think through that, one of the things that I think would be most helpful to the audience is just understanding. I also think that sometimes that super strong work ethic can work against you in being an entrepreneur, because sometimes I wish I would have given up earlier on something that just wasn't working and just cut bait and moved on. Because there have been some times in my career where I've been trapped by the fact that if I just work harder, I know I can work my way through anything and make it work. But sometimes
until you can't.
Sometimes you just you dig the ditch so deep. I mean, you come through on the other side and you win, but at what cost? You've used such a tremendous amount of resources to get it done. So I think that we need to maybe swing the pendulum back the other way. This is for me personally. Sometimes there have been a few projects I've invested in that I wish I had cut bait earlier.
Sometimes you can't see beyond the ditch. You dig the ditch too deep, you can't see beyond it. The ditch caves in on you. Both sides.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's just our behavioral profile, man. I mean, like on the disc profile, I'm such a D. I'm such a, I just think that if I can, I'll just keep digging deeper and I'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes with perspective, it's like, man, I was digging this crazy big hole. But if I just moved it 1 degree to the north, I would have been done in a day, whereas I was digging for a decade. So I think sometimes too, I just want the audience to think through that.
That's good.
And I think that's part of entrepreneurship. I mean, if something's just not working, changing to something else may be your best tact. But I think society is just in a place right now where if you give up on something, you're a failure and nobody wants to tell their friends. And so that's a problem too. So
I think, will you continue on the ditch scenario since it's the kind of part of our title there anyway.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of how I look back and I say, is there, time that should be spent looking way above the ditch, of course. And then is there other people that you should be getting to look at the direction of the ditch with you more often, right? And that's something I think I didn't know early on. And I think a lot of people they're competitive, hard driving, they think they got all the work ethic in the world, so they're going to get it done. Even if it's the hard way, they're going to get it done, but they spend, crazy time, going the wrong direction. So again, I think you mentioned a great point there, Jonathan,
Yeah, I think Dave Rendell says this, but it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And so a big part of it is just, do you have consultants? Do you have mentors? Do you have a board of advisors that you can climb a tall tree with every once in a while and just look out at your business or your life and just say, am I going in the right direction? Am I still going in the direction I wanted to go in? And is there an easier way? And I think sometimes we're so busy bushwhacking through the jungle of life or the jungle of business that we just don't go climb a tall tree and see that there is a much easier way. There's already a trail, but yet we're bushwhacking our way and we might be parallel a couple of feet away from where the trail is and we just don't even know it's there.
Exactly.
Did you come up with that quote? That's a good quote right there. That was a nugget, man. Bushwhacking your way through. You need to get on the tree with your mentors. I love that one, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, so the climbing a tall tree thing, I don't think it is brand new. The bushwhacking piece, I will trademark. Although right before the show, I did sign over all rights to my life and business in perpetuity to Gary. So
you did, absolutely. So it's ours now.
That's now Gary's and yours.
So tell us about your time, college and then your first gig.
Yeah, so in college, I went to the University of North Carolina on a scholarship. And through that experience, I would say one of the biggest things was I was actually the student attorney general in college, which means it's a fancy way of saying that I was the head prosecutor for the school. So super popular guy. But at Carolina, we have an honor court. And so anytime you're caught plagiarizing, using drugs, harassment, assault, all of those cases, and there's about 400 a year, go to the honor system, the honor court. And I was the head prosecutor, so had 20 student attorneys working for me, and I would decide whether or not there was enough evidence to send a case forward to the honor court. Wow. I tell you that story just because I think it was formative in terms of like my how I think about integrity and what it really means. And how I think about also the other side of integrity, which is that we all screw up. I screw up. Everybody screws up and makes mistakes. And then what does that mean for second chances and for mercy, clemency, and all of those pieces? Because of the role that I had. Sure. Having to decide with 400 kids per year, is this something that we want to send them to the honor court for that could send them home potentially?
What type of penalties or what did you have as far as leverage to use to discipline?
Anything from community service and probation, academic probation, to expulsion.
Whoa. Holy cow. And
principal.
were you a junior or senior when you took this on, or what?
Senior.
Okay.
So I worked as both on the defense side and the prosecution side, freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and then my senior year had that job. And we rewrote the honor code the year that I was in the seat. And so that was an interesting process, too. We said the famous quote was that I said you can't smell the honor on campus. And so then that got picked up by all the local papers. And it got picked up because we were trying to bring that back, because Carolina had a very rich tradition of this honor system.
Wow.
And that had eroded some over the 100 years. So
how many people wanted to kill you on campus?
That's kind of strong.
For that quote, probably several alone. But I think you get into some tough situations. So if a fraternity is brought before the honor court for hazing, not super popular, but also not cool to take students and have them sit in a bathtub and make human tacos out of them. So we could talk about a lot of interesting stuff that happened or that happens on college campuses. But really, my degree was in political science. And I think the interesting part about that is that wasn't intentional. It happened only because I really wanted to major in the best professors. And so it happened that after taking all the best professors that I heard about, I was most of the way to a poli-sci degree. And so from there, decided to just finish that so I could keep working on just taking great professors. So I have a pretty eclectic background of courses that I took.
So think of the networking opportunities Jonathan created in college there, right? Yeah. I mean, crazy. Professors had to know you, right? The best students had to know you, and the worst students had to know you. And boy, you had to deal with a lot of different personalities. That was a great lesson in networking.
Well, yeah, I think that's back to the used car salesman dad. He just taught me the power and the value of networking and being able to, I know that you guys think it's crazy. My wife thinks it's crazy that I'll ask the manager at Home Depot if I can get 10% off on a washer dryer. In the same way, I'll ask professors, if you were a student, who would you take? Who are the other great professors here that are really engaging, that I could really learn something from, agnostic of what course it is or what major it is. So that's why I ended up taking a class in journalism. I ended up taking a class in abnormal behavior in the psychology department. Things that I never would have taken. I took a physics course because they told me about this professor. His class was called How Things Work. He would bring in something each week that he cut in half. So he would take a refrigerator and cut it in half and bring it in and just show you how it worked. And then the next week he would cut. So every week you're walking in, you have no idea what this maniac would bring in.
That's kind of cool, though. That's really cool.
I don't know how a lot of different things work because that's how he taught. So I think in life, too, I'm still doing it. So I know that, Gary, you're big on mentors, on coaches, and I'm always looking to have mentors or coaches and then ask them who else they can introduce me to, who could also mentor me or coach me and take it to the next level.
Yeah, I'm understanding why, where you got to the world you're in today, as we're going to go forward and talk about that. I get it 100%. So it's kind of funny how your upbringing, really drives you to your passions. So, to college, what type of scholarship did you get, or why'd you get a scholarship? Were you, you're big, muscular, athletic dude, so you must have been a football star. You're
basketball.
You got those things on your ears. Yeah. I saw some. Maybe it's you got the wrestling ears. You got the cauliflower ears. I mean, what got you that scholarship?
So, good mentorship. When I started in high school, my mom happened to know one of the guidance counselors that she had gone to.
Payoff.
Yeah, exactly. No, they had gone to Temple together. But so she knew one of the guidance counselors and introduced me. And I sat down with her in 9th grade, and we came up with a plan for how we were going to build my academic career to set me up for scholarships.
Oh, wow.
So I actually, just through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, worked my butt off. Had my social life probably was not the best. I don't know if I told you this, Gary. I graduated and I was voted next Bill Gates. And I was also voted least likely to lose his virginity. So that about sums up the dedication that I had to academics.
Well, the first one is true. The second one is not, because of course you have kids, right? So, you know.
Well, you know what? I like, you might have been the last to have kids though too. but you know what? What I like is the planning. You know, that, you know, we all need to plan for success, and not many of us do a very good job, myself included, right? I've learned to do more planning, and I had a vision as a young guy, so I kind of had a vision and kind of planned sporadically and sloppily probably early on. But, you know, to think of your mom, you're a great mentor, to bring you in front of the talent in school, to say, well, you know, my son we just want to plan, right, son? And you're, yep, and you're on board, and you're thinking ahead of the plan to create the success that you expected. And then to get the buy-in from those leaders in the school, right, is huge, right? I mean, if you get the buy-in, they're going to talk to you. Hey, Jonathan, you know, you're a little out of whack over here, dude. If you want that plan to be executed, man, you're a little off over here, right? So it's not just you, it's not just your mom. It's what becomes the team of people in the school that care about you, because they know that you got this plan, right?
Yeah.
So in life, it's the same thing. In family and business, it's the same thing as we go forward. What's your plan? Because if you don't have one, you're not going to get anywhere you really think you're going to get unless you have a clear plan.
Yeah, that's kudos to your whole. I mean, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, I mean, it's kind of true, because, you know, that whole testament to where you're at, you know, is like the quote, you know, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You know, and it's really cool to see that it came out through Jonathan. You know, is even, you know, it's not even about the will to win, it's about the will to prepare. It's like they prepared you for the success that you're having today. Which is pretty cool to even hear that. So
that's just awesome stuff. So tell us, you know, you're in school. Then you did pretty well there in North Carolina. What was next for you?
Graduated and then went into investment banking. So the mergers and acquisitions department, it was National City Bank before National City got bought by PNC. And so was working in Cleveland and was working 80 to 100 hours a week. That's the typical schedule for investment banking when you first get started. I don't know if that ever really goes away, but I did it. I worked in that for 2 years. So in human years, it was really 4 years of experience, is the way that I like to put it. But got to participate on the team with companies being sold for anywhere from 10 million to over 500 million, and really got to learn what it takes to build value in a business, which is experience I wouldn't trade for anything. Without having been through that, I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing now. So it was absolutely worth it. I would say what happened, though, are a couple things. When my brother-in-law, Michael, came to me at one point and said, hey, there's this company in Denver. It's a fitness franchise. And he's the gym rat in the family. And he was like, will you come to Denver with me and just check this franchise out and make sure that I'm not going to get screwed, was really what happened. Yeah. So I flew with him to Denver to check out this franchise. And on the flight home from Denver, I looked at him and I said, why don't I leave the bank and do this with you? And that was really how it happened, because Michael had been like, you know, he looked at me one day. I went over to his house after work and I was standing in my suit on his porch. And he was like, dude, you look green. He was like, I think those fluorescent lights are turning you green, because I was working so much inside in Cleveland that I was never outside, wasn't getting any vitamin D, wasn't getting any sun. And I guess at that point, I just decided to leave the bank.
How old were you then, Jonathan?
25.
25, and making a great living for a 25-year-old guy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, investment banking is good for making a lot of money at any end of it. Sure. I think for me, when I left, my boss, who's still a mentor of mine, Sean, when I left, he was like, it probably makes sense because you're too much of a pain in the ass to work for anybody anyways. And I'll never forget that. But he's still been supportive, said that I was one of the best investment banking analysts he had working for him. But again, I just have a real hard time, I guess, working for anybody. So that's where the entrepreneurial piece came about for me. So and I had that great opportunity to go work with my brother-in-law.
So isn't it awesome that you have a mentor that's your boss that knows he'd love to have you stick with him because he kind of needs you on his team and loves you on his team, but yet he's that great of a person and culturally, the right type of person in leadership, right? That says, you know what? Something's better for you out there, go after it. I want you here more than anything. But boy, if there's something better for you personally, get it, right? Go after it.
That's absolutely right, Gary. And I think that's something that I really value in leaders too, is that I know he was annoyed. I know, Sean, that if you ever listen to this, I know you put a ton of time into investing in me and training me like we all do with our employees. And so it can be a real bone crusher.
I'm going to play Sean. I'm going to play Sean. Yeah, you little shit. I can't believe you did that to me. I love you, but I can't believe you had the gall to do that to me. But go on, and sorry.
No, sorry, dude. If this doesn't work out, maybe I could come back though.
Yeah, no. I believe me, I've been there, and everybody around me, I'll tell them the same thing, man. I love to keep. If anybody on my team, they're working hard. I love them on our team. They're serving our customers at the highest level. I don't want to lose them. But if there's a better something out there for them entrepreneurially or another organization that they can be a better fit in, God bless them. I want them to go get it. And it's a tough thing it's easy to say it, right? But when it happens, it's not that easy. So I commend Sean.
If we do that the right way, there's a chance that people will come back to us.
Sure.
Because I see this too. A lot of times somebody's already made a decision they're leaving, and then we show them the door in a way that's less than sympathetic. And then sometimes, a lot of times, I think people go try something else. They go try another job or they go try something entrepreneurial and it doesn't work out, but they don't want to go back to where they were because they're embarrassed or because it was a bad leaving. And so I think there's got to be a better way that as CEOs, as leaders, that we can do a better job of giving people a smooth bridge to the future so that if it doesn't work, they can actually come back. Like when a leader can point to people that have left their team and come back, I think that's a real sign of success. Sure. Because if somebody can leave and feel good enough to want to come back to you, exactly, I think that's a rare thing that's pretty damn cool.
Well, again, I think that's looking above the forest again, right? The top of the trees or above the forest again, because, initially right now it doesn't feel good, right? Because we got to figure out how to replace that key person and all the other things. But in the long run, I believe it always works out better. Almost always works out better, I should say, because I believe your reputation as a business leader, as a business itself, of culturally those type of people in your business leading others is the best, and people hear about that, and then that person may not come back as a person on your team in the future, but that does happen sometimes. But they may come back as a business partner in the future, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and you don't even know it. It's going to happen, and it does, and it's happened many times for me. So I believe even if you're a selfish person, you are better off not, in this case, doing exactly what Sean did. Yeah. So that's awesome.
I'm making a note because I think those are great interview questions, because I also hate all the boring interview questions, and they're like the same ones we ask because we're not creative enough to ask.
What are some boring interview questions?
Or what question you come up with right there based on that conversation right there?
Well, I think people want to know what some boring interview questions, so they don't have to ask those too,
Oh man, it's like, I see on your resume at your last job that you were there for 2 years, and tell me about why you left. Well, it's because I just didn't feel like I could really grow, and I worked so hard that I don't think it was appreciated because I was doing everybody else's work because I'm such a hard worker. And so what I was thinking is that, can you tell me about a time when you left a position, but you're still in touch with your former boss, or you're still in touch with people that you knew from that job? What is your ability to network and maintain relationships even after a breakup?
Right.
That's good.
Or like, if you are a leader, if you are a boss, tell me about a time when somebody left your team, but later came back to you if you have one of those stories.
Exactly.
And I know it's rare, but if you're one of those leaders that's magnetic enough to pull that off, then that's somebody that I'm really interested in finding out more about, because I think there may be something there.
Sure.
That was good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, go forward with that gym deal.
Yeah, I want to know about the gym too.
Q and I, we
work out.
Probably noticed we're kind of
Exactly.
kind of buff. Not totally, but pretty much. Q and I. That's Q and I. So you probably know we're kind of experts on the subject. So go ahead. Let's see what you can fire at us, will you?
Yeah. So how many push-ups do you do a day? How many chin-ups?
I do. Well, you know what? Chin-ups are kind of a thing for me and push-ups. So you shouldn't have said this because it's going to sound like I'm bragging.
Okay.
Go for it.
I can't say it. I can't.
No.
I'll do. I used to do as a wrestler. I used to do anywhere from 32 to 35 pull-ups a shot, and chin-ups, I should say. And then now, as an old guy, my goal is to get to 30 sets of 30 or more. And I've been doing it for the last 7-8 months now again.
Wow.
And I'll do sets of 20 to 25 now. So for an old guy, that's not bad.
That's really good.
Right?
Yeah, dude, I'll give you that. I can do maybe 7 with my trainer holding my legs on the last 2.
No, I have an advantage though over most people. I have stick legs. So stick legs, they're easy to carry up on those pull-ups.
Is that what it is? Okay.
So my upper body is kind of normal, and my legs are stick legs, stick guy legs. So that's an advantage.
That's the opposite, unfortunately.
Wait, I thought he was going to say he had hollow legs. So with the gyms, started when I was 25, and what I was really good at was borrowing money to open more gyms. And so over 5 years, we grew to own 5 of these franchises. And at 30 years old, I finally climbed a tall tree and looked around, and I was 30 with 30 employees and had no idea what I was doing.
Wow.
And so that's where we got into the whole traction thing. That's where we got into that entrepreneurial operating system. I was actually learning chair for my chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization here in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. So I know you know EO, but I brought in Mike Payton, who is currently the guy that runs all of the entrepreneurial operating system, to be a speaker in Cleveland.
Okay. And
fell in love with what he was doing. And we started to use that traction system to get traction with our gyms. And then we're able to, from there, grow one of our units to be the top unit out of the many hundreds of franchises of this personal training studio that existed. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was really passionate about and great at.
Can you say the name of the franchise or no?
Oh yeah, it's still around. It's Fitness Together.
Oh, okay. All right.
So still based in Denver. I think that there's some out in Chicago. So y'all may have seen it, but they're about 1,500 square feet. And the concept is all one-on-one personal training. That's all that they do.
Probably 1,500 square feet. They probably don't have enough 45 plates for you, Q.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they probably got one treadmill. So. No, just okay.
No. So okay, so they're a franchise, national franchise. You had 5 of them, and what happened after you really injected the EOS system and traction into it?
Yeah.
So we grew and we grew and we grew. We had the most personal training sessions ever in the history of the franchise.
Wow.
We had the most units ever in the history of the franchise. We broke the revenue goals for the franchise, and it was all going great. And then the Great Recession.
Oh.
So 2008 hit, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. So for the audience that's still listening, let them in on a little secret. Personal training is the worst thing that you can try to sell in a recession.
Wow, that makes sense.
It is the worst. Nobody wants to buy personal training in a recession.
Right.
And I didn't see it coming. I had no plan. So I spent the first couple months of the recession in the fetal position underneath my desk.
Wow.
And so that was where I had to borrow money from my mother-in-law in order to survive the recession. So without a plan, that was what happened. And so ended up borrowing a few bucks from her in order to make it through.
What did you learn through that whole experience?
Well, there's a lot of different things.
Hey, that's what this podcast is for.
Like the fetal system,
The fetal
position is actually kind of a great yoga position as well. What else?
So that's really like the whole thing that we learned is that for recessions, they can be opportunities, but you have to have a plan. Mm-hmm. And so really started through talking to my mentor, and that's Paul Belair. He's the co-author of the Rock the Recession book. But in talking to Paul had a plan for the recession. So at the time that I was going into my gyms going into the recession in the gym business without a plan, and we know how that worked out. I ended up borrowing $250,000 from my mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. And the worst part is that I didn't even borrow it all at once. I borrowed it every 2 weeks. I would call her up, Quentin. I'd be like, "Hey," and then I would try to make some small talk. I'd be like, "Hey, Em, how's it going? How are you doing?" And she'd be like, "Great. How are the grandkids?" I'd be like, "Oh, they're great. We're all great. Hey, can I it's payroll week again? Any chance I could maybe borrow another 20,000?" And so it was actually 12 phone calls, just having to ask for money. And I've paid her back at this point. And I know I'm showing you guys I'm still married.
Yeah.
and now we can laugh about it. I think it brought us closer together. But
you had some leverage, just like when you deal with the guy at Home Depot. You had some leverage. I'm sure you used it, like the grandkids. You like to see the grandkids, don't you, mother-in-law?
I'm like,
yeah, I know it's been 8 times now, but gonna need a little more here. And the kids haven't seen you for 2 days, and I know you like to see them every day. It might be a week or two unless I get this.
Yeah, I think right around the 8th time, I was like, I think we're about to turn the corner.
Well, you were right on then.
The small talk got smaller each time. But what I learned, back to Quentin's question, is that Paul had a plan, and that's that he had bought a construction company, an HVAC business called Roth Brothers, and he and his team invested $1 million in this company right before the Great Recession, and then they grew it using the Great Recession as fuel. Mm-hmm. And it was a tough recession for contractors. So it's especially impressive to me that they were able to grow it, but they grew it over 63 months and then they sold it for over 70 million. Mm-hmm. And the way that they did that was that they switched a lot of the HVAC installation, like they were putting heating and air conditioning systems on top of commercial buildings. They switched it to really being a service-focused company.
That sounds familiar.
They knew that in a recession, people wouldn't want to do large installs. They wouldn't have the capital and they wouldn't want to spend the money, but that they would need to keep servicing their existing heating and air conditioning systems. Mm-hmm. And so they were really the first, or one of the first, to focus on the service component and to leverage what they knew would be a trend in the recession.
It's funny. And Paul and I became very good friends, fast friends, after we met the first time through a YPO event. And I think we were in Europe or something at the time, at a construction roundtable in Sweden, I think Stockholm. Anyway, but we just couldn't break apart from it. Every time we see each other, we'd connect and start talking more about what we're doing and what we've done in our business. But we had exactly the same mentality, and that's we've talked about this here as well, Jonathan. Where if we didn't switch to maintenance and maintaining parking lots across the country instead of construction, we wouldn't be in business today.
Yeah,
maybe we'd be in a new business today. We'd have claimed bankruptcy and started something else by now. But either way, our business that was there wouldn't be there. Wouldn't have stood the test of time, because new construction went down 80%, not 20, 30, 40, 50, 80% in every market we were in. And we were 95% maintenance at that point. And maintenance before that point was not a glorious business. Even today, we can grow our businesses 3 to 5 times the size they are today in a short period of time if we focused on new construction. And we still do not do it because we know that in tough times, that business will not be there. And so I love where we're going because I know a little bit about your success and where it's gone now. So if you can go into you talk about that book anytime because we got to get this book and read it because two of our good friends wrote it and I know it's a great one. But if you can talk about maybe where you ended the gym business and how you got into further now in the EOS and traction and now the recession world and speaking and all the things you do now.
Sure. So with the gyms, we got through the Great Recession because my mother-in-law loaned me the money and we've been able to pay her back. In early 2017, I'll back up a year. In 2015 and 16, friends asked me if I would start doing some consulting with their businesses to help them to install the entrepreneurial operating system. And so really, I know that earlier we talked about how I usually have a plan for things. I actually did not have a plan to do this. So a couple of friends asked me, they were like, hey, we know what you've done in your business. Can you help us just get started with doing it in ours? So I did. And then I discovered that that's what I was really passionate about and not about fitness. So I wish I could say that I'm like Howard Schultz and I love coffee and felt the same way about fitness, but I didn't. My brother-in-law is the gym rat. He was the one that's into fitness. He's the personal trainer in the family. He knows how to do 30 chin-ups. And more importantly, he knows how to get guys like me to be able to do 30 chin-ups. And so that's really, he wakes up every morning excited to help people reach their fitness goals. That was not what got me out of bed in the morning. But what I did love is how do you get other business owners to be able to get to the top of their game? Like I know if I just work hard enough, I can do it in my business. What I really love, though, is the challenge of how do I coach somebody else to do it? Because then I can't do it for them. How do I teach somebody else to fish? How can I lead them to do it instead of doing it myself? And so by early 2017, I had a tough conversation with my brother-in-law where he came to me and it was like, look, man, you're hardly in this business anymore. Why don't you just let me buy you out of this business and you can go be full-time doing consulting work? And so that's what really happened. And the uncomfortable part there was really cutting the line and just being completely off on my own and not having that business to go back to. But for him, it's a great retirement vehicle for him and his family. I understood that. And for me, I did that in early 2017. So since then, now I just do this full time. So running around the country, consulting for mostly contractors are most of the companies I work for. And like I said, I work with about 20 different companies at a time, see them each once a quarter. So about 100 days a year, I'm doing traction with companies, helping them figure out how to structure their businesses for growth is really the focus. And then 2 years ago, what was going on is that I was worried because most of my companies, most of my book of business are contractors. And I know that recessions are especially tough on contractors, not just the last recession, not just the Great Recession, but like you mentioned earlier, most recessions are tough because a lot of new construction, a lot of install work does go away in a recession. And so even if it's not as bad as the Great Recession is, people don't tend to build new homes in recessions.
Absolutely.
Offices, corporations don't tend to expand and build new headquarters in recessions. Even if they have the cash, the issue is also optics. You don't want to be building a brand new office in a time when everybody else is losing money and having a hard time. It just doesn't look good. So in a lot of cases, that work goes away. So I started to put together some exercises with Paul to help all my clients just get ready for the next recession. That was it. We looked online, we looked on Google, we looked on Amazon, we put in recession. We couldn't find any workbooks. We couldn't find any books on recessions. And so we were like, well, either this is a really stupid idea or we just need to do it. So Paul and I actually started, we put together a workbook on how to help companies rock the recession. The angle was never really how do you survive it, but it's how could you look forward to a recession? What would you need to do now that you would put yourself in a position to be excited for a recession because of the opportunities that it'll bring?
Absolutely. Now, and you know, we talk a lot about differentiation here too, Jonathan, and what you've done. We had you speak at a great conference in D.C. not long ago in front of a bunch of mid-sized to large business leaders in construction, and at the Global Construction Network roundtable we had in D.C. Did an awesome job, and people loved where you're going with this, and to do 20 businesses, as you're saying, this is a lot of work, man. We do at EOS, and it takes a lot to prepare for it. We've been doing it for a few years, and we're having amazing good fortune because of the organizational glue I think it creates between the visionary and the operational system, operational system in place, and the operators of the business, right? So we've had great results with it, as you know. But you're offering some pretty cool differentiation, because this is in common that the EOS, the person you trust to lead the EOS system, and actually is doing much more, and saying, man, I'm not sure you're recession-proof. Can we talk about that? And if you can help them do that, now you're totally separating from all the other consultants, EOS or otherwise, that I know, because I've read many books on operational systems other than this one, and organizational systems, and they'll touch on recession-proof and stuff, but not really go into depth on it. So what you're providing is huge differentiation, and I commend you, because that's what's going to really catapult your success. Even you're one of the bigger ones in the space in nowadays, but it's going to be awesome to watch where you go with this. So continue on. What's a nugget? What's something you've seen, you've discovered already with a company or two?
I appreciate it. I mean, I know what I love about the format of your podcast, Gary, is it gives us a chance to go more in depth. So I'm going to give you an exclusive, because we don't usually get into this. But I think one of the things is that this project selfishly is my recession plan. Yeah, I mean, thinking through being a consultant, EOS, all the traction implementers, we've actually never been through a recession since the book was published after the last recession. And so it's really grown since then. But I'm thinking in a recession that this is one of the first things that'll go, because consultants as a group tend to be the group that goes first when companies are making cuts.
Sure.
And so if a company isn't growing, having a high-priced exterior outside consultant to help out with, that's not the best position to be in. So for me, it's just thinking through, if I'm the recession consultant, though, I'm probably pretty protected, because the company is going to want me on board. I'm going to be the last thing to go.
Absolutely. Not just the last to go. You're going to get a lot of calls as well.
Well, yeah. So I think it's a hedge. So already since, I think the yield curve inverted back in July. And so we know that generally when the yield curve inverts, it doesn't even matter if the audience knows what that means or not, except that it is our best recession indicator. It's helped to predict the 7 prior recessions that we've had. So knowing that we likely have a recession coming up in the next 6 months, the next year, the next 2 years, it doesn't matter what the time frame is. It's really just a hedge against that.
Isn't part of that, Jonathan, where the long-term interest rates do the reverse that they're expected to do? That long-term interest rates get to be worse than the short-term. Is that right?
Exactly. So when the yield curve inverts, it just means that usually, like if you just think about if Gary, if you loan Quentin money and you loan Quentin that money and you're like, you can pay me back in a year, you're going to want a higher interest rate than if you loan Quentin some money and he's going to pay you back in a week. If he's going to pay you back in a week, you're probably like, don't even worry about any interest. That's crazy. I don't care. If it's a year, though, you're like, okay, I could have put that money to work. I could have had it in my savings account. I could have earned some interest on it.
Exactly.
So you got to give me some interest. So when you're charging Quentin more to loan him money for a week than you are for a year, that's called an inversion in the yield curve.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what we saw back in July, is that the U.S. government we were paying more on short-term debt than long-term debt. And I can explain all the economic geekery behind why that happens in an economy. It doesn't even matter, though. You should just know that that's a signal to the world that there's economic disruption coming in the future. And generally, we know it's like a 6 to 18 month window after we see that first inversion. And that happened back in July of this year for the first time.
So let's say if I was a business right now, doesn't matter what business, you can name the business or name the industry. And I was to call you and say, hey, listen, I saw that. I want to be recession proof, if you will. What would probably be some of the first things? And they should buy the book. They should definitely buy your, But what would probably be some things to give them right now for them to kind of check to see what, how can they become recession proof when that time comes?
Yeah, look, I want everybody to buy the book, but they can just go to recession.com. And yes, that really is my website. But you go to recession.com. On recession.com, it's free. You can take our assessment. So Paul and I created a 20-question recession readiness assessment. And it takes 5 to 10 minutes. It will tell you how ready you are as a business leader, how ready your company is on a scale of 0 to 100 versus everybody else that's taken the assessment. And so far, what we're seeing is that the average score is a 38. So if you go take it and your score is above a 38, you're more ready than everybody else that's taken it. Less than 38, less ready. And then you can get some tips on what you should do to start improving your score. And that's really what the book is about. The book just goes through the 20 questions we ask and says, if you're green on this question, here's what you should do to be ready for the next recession. If you're yellow, if you're red, then this is what you should do and this is what you should do.
Sure.
And so that's really, that's the first step, is just benchmark where you are. It's to assess and figure out your situation. That's step one.
The way I think of it, Jonathan, the way I thought of it in the early 2000s when I was hit with just a little bit of a recession and some issues in my business prior to that, was how do I surround myself with customers that are busier or as busy in tough times as in good times, right? And I looked at McDonald's and I looked at Walmart and I looked at all the different retail businesses that I believed, right, would be busy in tough times. I did a little bit of history on these businesses as well to prove that they were, and they became my targets in business. And then I said, I'm not going to do new construction for them. I want to do maintenance for them. I want to be the leader in maintenance to serve them when in the dirtier businesses, right? New construction is kind of sexy for us. So again, so we went after maintenance instead of what we thought was a sexier business. And it worked out really well in 2008, 9, 10, where we grew more than ever. But I think there's probably some combinations, right, Jonathan, where it's and you're doing it right now, and I love it, where you're guiding your partners that you're consulting to, making them more recession proof. So you're doing business. And if they don't, Jonathan, you almost got to say, boy, you know what? If these couple of companies don't get their stuff together, they're not going to be good customers, and they're not going to be there for me in the recession. If you can replace them with somebody else, you're probably more, better off yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes, I agree with everything you're saying. And then I'm looking in the book right now on page 171. I give a table of the industries that grew or held steady in the recession, in the Great Recession, and the ones that got pummeled. So, like, for example, if you're in construction and you're building jewelry stores, or you're doing work for four-year universities or casinos, then you got to start to think about repositioning. Sure. Because those industries do not do well in recessions. Neither do hotels and motels. So if you're building hotels and that's 100% of your book, then you need to be thinking through what that looks like for you if those projects get shuttered in a recession, if they lose their financing. On the other hand, things like information, so building data warehouses, things like guns and ammo, things like grocery stores or community colleges, those all bump up in a recession. Right. I like veterinary services. And the reason I really like that is because you're probably thinking to yourself right now, like, what is he talking about? People still take care of their pets in a recession. Sure. And so if you're building those little veterinary clinics that we're seeing pop up all over the place, you're probably in a good spot because those are cash businesses. They're not even insurance.
Yeah.
And people, if your dog gets sick, you're still going to take them to the emergency vet. So I think people just need to think through and do a little bit of homework.
Sure.
Right now, the tortilla business is booming. Again, I know that's a weird one. But as we think through, tortillas are popular. They're growing in popularity. In a recession, I think people eat more or even more burritos. So if you're doing work with tortilla manufacturers, then you've got to feel good about what that is. But
so less investment in the seafood business and a little more in the tortillas. I like that.
Right, exactly. If you're doing oysters and lobster shucking, you got to be really thinking through what is that going to look like.
Well, this is something actually. On one of the other podcasts with Paul Darley, he talks about like innovation doesn't have to be radical. You remember when he was talking about how he used to have the glass with the water, and then it
turn into a box.
Turn into a box, and it's the small things, and that's kind of what you're saying as well. Like, you know, if you just look at what industry you're involved in, you might want to figure out how to innovate or pivot, right? Just pivot just a little bit so you can get through that, get through this recession opportunity. So
and I mean not just through a rocket. Like
that's right. Now get through it, rocket.
Because you can, because if you can rock the recession, as Jonathan's saying, you're going to come out of it so much stronger. And Jonathan, I know you think this way because in Traction we think this way a lot, and EOS, and I know you're one of the leading people in this world of EOS. But you know, we today look at enterprise value appreciation on an annual basis, and we say, you know, profits are great, and all this innovation is great, and growth is great, and the amount of trucks we have out there, hey, that's cool, right? Not so much anymore to me, but it used to be, you know. So now it's like, what only thing that really matters is, are we growing are we appreciating our enterprise value, right? And when you as that young private equities guy that you were, right? When you're looking at businesses, what are you looking at? You're looking at what's the value of the business, and the value there's multipliers that apply to recession-proof, of course, and getting through the toughest times. If the business had a history of ups and downs that correlated with the recession, big problems. Now, some might look at that as an opportunity, but many don't want to fix that problem. They'd rather have a business that got through the recession super strong. So the value add to that business in an outside party looking at a business, or the value add to the equity holders in the business, even if it never sells, is enormous, right? And I think that's what we got to think about, right? Not just getting through it, but rocking it. I love it, right?
Yeah, and it's simplest. It's like when people are looking at valuing a company, a lot of it is a risk assessment. Mm-hmm. And so what we're talking about here in large part is, how do I mitigate the downside in a recession? And then also, how can I 10x my business using this massive opportunity? And look, since World War II, we've had 11 recessions. They've lasted on average 11 months. The shortest one back in 1980 was 6 months. The Great Recession back in 2008 was 18 months. As we look forward to the next recession, you can hustle and grind and hopefully at some point realize whatever your dream outcome is. Or if you position yourself correctly, then the recession can offer you massive opportunities to be able to leapfrog past that period of having to hustle and grind for 30 years or 40 years to ultimately get to what you want. Mm-hmm. Why do we always have to make it so hard? And why does everything these days have to be about your only option is to try really, really hard for a really long time to get to where you want to go? And that's why I think that if we look forward to a recession, if you can rock it, then you can have that dream outcome like Paul did, investing $1 million, 63 months later, selling it for over 70 million. And look, I get it. Not everybody's goal is to make a fantastic amount of money. Totally cool. Although in most of the life plans that I am a part of that I see, having financial freedom is a big part of it to allow us to move past that stage of Maslow's hierarchy to then go on to realize other things. And whether it's just so that you can Scrooge McDuck it with all of your money, or you can be fantastically generous and give it all away, a lot of it does start with the financial freedom piece. And recessions, I'm looking at, I'm so jacked up about it because I just see them as a big opportunity and they don't come around that often. So we got to be ready for it. And if you're like me and you don't have a plan, they only last 11 months. You're going to miss it.
I love it. And Q, we're going to take this and we're going to write our own book. We got to figure out though, we're going to just going to be almost exactly like theirs, I'm sure, right? but we might call it. I mean, we're going to catch a different audience. It might be rapping the recession. It could be hip hopping the recession.
Oh, I like that one.
And it could be jazzing the recession, right? But we can twist, do a little twist off this.
No. I'll help you out, Gary. You can have crush the crash,
or
you can have dodge the downturn.
We're dancing guys here. We got to figure something out that it's got some beat to it.
Those
you stole rockin'. I'm a rocker, and you stole rockin' already. But we got he's a hip hopper, and
that's right.
And I can get into a little bit of rap, I think. So we're gonna come up with something. But no, that's awesome. I think it's gonna kick butt, and we're gonna get a bunch of these books and first read it. And I know the story, so I know it's going to be I know your story and Paul, so I know it's going to be a great one. Then we're going to get these out to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we look at your values today, I know you see lots of core values of companies on a consistent basis, and you're helping them probably, if they're going to change a core value here or there, and you're probably doing all the exercises for them, and whether they're new core values or they're rehabbing their core values. You personally and your business, Jonathan, what do you look at as far as your core values?
Yeah, so you all know the word lagniappe?
Absolutely not.
So lagniappe is a French Creole word. It comes from the New Orleans area, referring to that 13th donut in a baker's dozen.
Okay.
It really means a little something extra that you weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, lagniappe is one of my core values. I'm always trying to deliver for my clients, for my family, for my audiences, a little something extra that they weren't expecting. So that's a big one. And I love that you guys have never heard of that word, because it gives me a chance to tell that story and to just explain where I'm coming from. And so I think that's a lot of the book. It's a lot of my keynote addresses. It's a lot of how I approach doing traction with the teams I work with is, what can I do that they're not expecting to give them a little something extra, a little something fun that's unexpected to really make the experience a top-notch experience. And I know that that's something with your paving business that you're always looking at, Gary, is just, and I like about construction that it's so easy, because construction has such low expectations that if we can just give somebody a little something extra they weren't expecting, it's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so giving people more than they might have thought they paid for, right, is a great way to look at it. I mean, we call it delivering exceptional experiences, and if everybody in our team can be delivering exceptional experiences to each other as teammates, or to our vendors and to our customers, it's a culture of success, because everybody's saying, hey, how do I do a little more? And boy, if your customer can feel that, you're going to keep them for a long time. I love it.
I want to be courageous. And by that, I mean, I want to go for disruptive growth. And when I say courageous, I mean, I'll only know that I'm really living that value when sometimes I miss and make a big mistake. So that's when I've pushed it too far and then I have to pull it back a couple feet. That's where I want to be living. Sure. Because until I've done that, until I've broken it, I don't know that I was actually pushing the limits. Right. And so my wife, again, if she were here, she would tell you that when I am at Home Depot asking them for a little something off the price, that sometimes I go a little too far and they get frustrated, and then I got to back it off a little. I'm like, all right. I know. Yes. She'll be like, man, why did you have to ask them to throw in installation? They already agreed to give you 15% off. Just let it go.
Or honey,
and I'm like,
next time.
No. Yeah.
Honey, next time you see that grown man cry, please just let out just a little bit. Oh, that's funny. What else on the core? Anything else?
Yep. So for me, it's be courageous. It's lagniappe, and the other one is going for 10x improvement. Mm-hmm. So trying to think of things that take it so far. Like, so a lot of people think incrementally, and they think, how can I get from where I am now to maybe make my income a little bit better? or how can I get from where I am and save up a little bit more? But if you start to think, what does it have to be so that I could actually add a zero, so that I could 10x it? What would I have to do differently? I just love that mindset.
Absolutely.
Because that means you can't just try a little bit harder. Like I feel like a lot of problem solving sessions with strategic planning, a lot of the solutions are around, well, if we could get people to just try a little bit harder, then we could do a little bit better. And I don't think that that's very sporting. What's the fun in that? Like, what if we had to get somebody to be able to make 10 times as many Big Macs in a day? Then what would have to happen to our technology, to our process, to everything that we do? What if somebody had to put down 10x as much pavement? How would we have to think differently about the business versus what if I was just trying to get somebody to work a little bit faster?
Sure. I love
those are the big ones for me.
That's really good.
And I like the simplicity of 3. 3 also. I mean, we have
totally.
friends that come up with 10 or 7, and we're at 5, and I think that's stretching it. That's a little too much, but we couldn't get it down less than 5, right? But 3 is
or
awesome.
4 max is where I like to be. And if it's 5, I hope you guys have a cool mnemonic to just help people remember it.
Yeah. I've got a story about it, but not everybody has a story straight, so we need to work on that. So thanks for reminding me of that, Jonathan. More work to do.
Yeah.
Well, he's trying to help you 10x yourself. That's what he's trying to do.
You're right. So again, when you look at the success you've had and the things you've done, do you attribute any of this to this free enterprise system and the ability to visualize things and create in this America we know today?
Yeah. So in talking, I've had the opportunity to do podcasts. I'm thinking about South Africa right now, and was on that show. And what I understand is that they face incredible challenges, even in a country that is more developed than many other countries in the world. But one of those is that their politicians are in such a place that they actually have load shedding, meaning that they don't have electricity 100% of the time.
Is that your dog messing up the place there or what?
Yeah, my dog decided to just come into the office for, she's making a cameo on our podcast.
I love it.
So when we talk about the fact they don't have, they can't use the internet 100% of the time because there are certain hours of the day that they can even be online. Wow. It just reminds me how lucky we are to be in this country and to have the opportunity that we have. I mean, what if on top of everything else you're going through, Gary, you had to think about, well, tomorrow I'm only going to have access to the internet for 3 hours. What am I going to do in that window of time? I mean, it's so omnipresent now in our lives. And there's so many things that we just don't even think about because of how fortunate we are, because of where we are. And we take that for granted. And I think to bring it back to recessions, people are always asking me, what's the one thing with recessions? Why? What's going on? It comes down to this. It's complacency. And right now, we have been in a period of over 10 years of prosperity. Many entrepreneurs have never known a recession. Many businesses have never even been through a recession. And people are complacent. And so what can we do now to plan for a time in the future that might not be as prosperous as what we're currently going through? And I hope that people never even need to use the plan. But we didn't even talk about the fact that even if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't even think there's going to be a recession. I think that the Federal Reserve will prevent us from being in one. Every business has recessions, even if they're non-economic. So if you lose your biggest client,
sure.
You're in a recession.
Absolutely.
If your 5 best employees leave and they go across the street and start another paving company, you're in a recession.
That's right. Yeah.
If you discover how about this, we hear about this all the time in YPO, right? Or EO, somebody embezzles $1 million from you or from your company.
Hello, recession.
You're in a recession. Yeah. So do you have a plan for what you're going to do, agnostic of whether or not it's economic or non-economic recession?
Absolutely. And there will be a recession in our country, whether it's next year or 5 years or 10 years. It's going to happen. and anybody is fooling themselves if they're not thinking that way. And your complacency complacency kills. Business kills any relationships in the long run. Whether it's us and our wives, whether it's us and our friends, us in business, our states and their tax systems, right? Complacency kills every good thing. And again, if we're not on our toes, ready for that recession, boy, you know what? Be ready to get your butt kicked.
Right.
So I love where you're going. I love what you're doing. It's awesome. And I can't wait to read your book. And I've been wanting to read it. Now I got to get it soon. Rock the Recession, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any closing thoughts? When it comes to, is there anything else in your life? Is there any faith that guides you? A lot of your principles are principles that I look at that I believe in through faith and stuff. Is there anything there in your life that you look to?
Yeah. So not so much on the faith or spirituality side. I would say for me, the closing thought is really related to how do you rock your life. So if we took these same ideas, and by the way, that's the next book that I want to put together, is how could we do life planning to really help you prepare to take your life to the 10x level? What would that have to look like? And I think that, we spend so much time planning for the holidays, for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for whatever you believe in, or even agnostic of that, planning for our daughters' weddings. And we don't spend any time, at least I don't hear about it a lot, planning our lives. So that's really my bedrock. And that's only because of my mentors, really starting with Paul 10 years ago. That was what he first guided me on, was having a life plan and creating that system for me that's my North Star. So that when I have a bad day, when I have a bad week, when I lose a client, when I need to figure out how I want to pivot in my business or my personal life, that I've got that plan written down somewhere. And for me, it's actually, you can see it behind me on this big ass whiteboard, is my life plan. So that it's front and center for me and for my wife, since we share this office, so that we can always be checking in on that.
I love it. So Q ends up always.
Oh man, I got some good stuff.
Q's nuggets here, and let's talk. Let's go wrap those up.
I got some really, really good Quentin's true takeaways for you guys from Jonathan. First, wrap your core values in a different way. The way you started that off, I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. The porta potty and all of that from that perspective. But you said something that was really amazing. I hope you all caught it. Sometimes you have to cut the bait and move on. And that's huge. That is definitely huge when it comes to business.
Absolutely.
Recession can be an opportunity, but you must have a plan. But more importantly, you can rock the recession by pivoting, which is extremely key. And you've showed that multiple times. I love this, and I've never heard the word before. Do your best to lanyap, you guys. Do your best to lanyap. Sometimes the extra that they don't expect gets you there. Mentorship can help you in all plans of your life. But more importantly for you guys, how do you rock your life? Listen to me. All of our listeners, listen to me. How do you rock your life? Make sure you honor the court, or Jonathan will expel you. All right. So we appreciate you, Jonathan. Exactly. Thank you so much, man.
Jonathan, awesome job. We really appreciate your time today, brother. And we'll be talking to you soon, because we run into some of the same paths and stuff. So I really appreciate everything you've done here today to be with us. And people are going to get a ton out of this, man.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next time on Ditch Digger CEO.
See ya.